So I come from Belgium, and my main interests are about automation, monitoring, availability. I am contributing to Prometheus, to Grafana, and I've also started the Graphonet project, so to create a Grafana dashboard using JSONnet. So I work for Inuit. We are a European company who do open source consultancy across different kinds of organizations. But now let's talk about labels. So let's first get back to the basics, like what's a metric in Prometheus? Well, it's a name, and then it's key value pairs, so that you have like the name of the matrix. In this case, it's like HA proxy, HTTP responses total, and then you have cardinality, which is all the different stuff that are attached to that. Like the backend is circuit, the code is 1xx, the environment is acceptance, for example. So all of that makes what we call a metric. What you might not know is that a metric name is also a label. Like it's the label underscore underscore name underscore underscore. So that's also a label. So you can, everywhere where you use a label, you can actually alter the name, change the name. And you can do some stuff like that. Like you want to understand when the cardinality is coming from, then you can count your metrics by name. So that you have the count value, which usually removes the name of the matrix, but you can explicitly say, okay, please keep the name so that I know which matrix have the highest cardinality, for example. Prometheus itself also adds some labels when it scrapes matrix, like it will add a job and an instance label. You can add static labels also in the job configuration. So that you always have basically labels attached to your metrics. Well, you should at least. But labels is more than that. So Prometheus is using them all over the place. So it starts in the configuration. So when Prometheus is doing the configuration and it's looking, okay, what should I scrape now? It will also have some labels to say, okay, this is my configuration, this is my target. So this is also using labels. When it will fetch the targets, it will fetch the labels that are exposed by the target, but also add its own or override the ones of the target. And after it has done that, it can also like alter the labels. So that's also like relabeling. And when you also record rules, it will do the same. It will use labels, and it will enable you to add labels with the recording rules. Also in the federation, so when you have a Prometheus server that federates another one, it will get the external labels on top of the Prometheus labels. And when it sends alerts, also it will add the labels. For the remote write, it will also add some labels. So there are labels all over the place. Even some that you don't see, like when you do the service discovery, then you have some labels that start with underscore underscore meta that are added by the service discovery agents. Like for Kubernetes, for a pod, you have like a lot of meta labels that you can use and reuse when you do the relabeling. When you want to configure your target, you can just use them. And it's like that for all the service discovery, including the file service discovery, where you have like the files path, so you know where your target is coming from. So what does relabeling mean? It means like you change the labels, you add the labels, you remove them, whatever you want. The only rule that you have is that you should not have duplicated metrics at the end. Like if you remove a label from a metric, you must be sure that at the end you still have the same number of metrics, that you don't have a matrix with the same set of labels twice. Okay, one last thing before we go into the subject, like regex. I know everyone loves regex. Prometheus use every2 regular expression. Well, for me, it just works. It's like the regex I use everywhere else, so it's fine for me. You need to know that they're ensured. It means that if you use bar, it will not match foobar because it will try to match from the beginning to the end. So you can ensure with the dot and asterisk sign. And then you can also use capture groups to say, okay, this is something I don't know, but I want to have that in a variable that I can use. So some example that if you are familiar with tools like grep, you will recognize them. So if I say prom pipe alert, then it will match prom, it will match alert. If I use 201 and then the square bracket 78, then it will match 2017 and 2018. And then if I use the the parentheses, it will also match things and make new variable like you would expect it. So let's go for relabeling. So relabeling is something that you add at the end of, in the job configuration, matrix relabel config, and then it's a list. So Prometheus will do one after each other, and it will relabel your matrix like that. So let's start with a simple one. So because name is a label, I can actually change the name of the matrix. So we have a job SQL that will select from a status table of any database system a bunch of metrics, and we can just say, okay, this is my Prometheus metric name. That's what the exporter will tell me. And then in Prometheus, I say, okay, no, please do that. Please make that my metric name, so that my metric name is actually logical, and it's not like Prometheus query something. And then the second step is, okay, because I now use that as my metric name, I don't need the label, so I can use the action label drop. So each relabel step has an action, and you have multiple options. One of them is label drop. It means I don't need that label. So it means that that metric, which is like the performance counter for a random database system, which contains a Prometheus metric name called SQL Server underscore databases, will just become SQL Server databases, and I will have less metrics, and I will have metrics that I am more confident to see in the UI when I select metrics. So it makes more sense to have a metric like SQL Server databases and queries result the MOS performances counters, for example. The second thing is extracting labels. Like we have a convention for our HA proxy that the name of the backends means something. It's not just like a random name. So we can just say, okay, for the HA proxy metric, so we first look at the source labels, which are the name. And then we say, okay, the name should be like HA proxy. It should start with HA proxy. And then we have the backend, which is another label on the original HA proxy exporter. I say, okay, we have 4 groups in our label, which are delimited by colons. And then we say, okay, I know that the second item is the environment, and the first item is like the partner, which we address using HA proxy. So instead of having like a big backend label, then we can say, okay, this is like the partner, this is like the environment of the partner. So we know, without doing complex queries or complex regexes later on, that from the script time we will have the right target. So this is the example. So like if we have like a backend which is like example ACC services something, then I know that the partner will be example and that the environment of the partner will be like ACC. And I don't need to actually do complex query later on. I have them just at script time. And I don't need to change the exporter neither. Another thing that you can do is dropping metrics. So for example, we are using Jira, and the Jira exporter by default will tell you when someone updates a ticket, when someone will log in, when someone will update an issue, when someone will view a dashboard, which is something that some problematic is that you don't want to deal with inside Prometheus because they are not really useful. So you can just say, okay, the metric with the label name, I just drop them if the name is like Jira user login count, because Prometheus is not the location I want to use that, but I also don't have the time to change the exporter to actually remove the privacy issues that I might have. So I can just say, okay, drop the metric that I don't want. And you have the number of metrics available as a Prometheus metric, which is like the script samples script, and then you can make a difference with the script sample post metric relabeling so that you know how many metrics you have dropped when you have scraped on your target. So that was for the metrics. Now the configuration. So one of the use cases to change the configuration is that you might want to reuse a target. So if you scrape some targets using HTTPS, you might also want to use the same with a black box exporter, so you know if the SSL certificate will expire or not. So we have an initial job, which is like, okay, we have a job called traffic, And it will just be like, we will scrape it using HTTPS, and it will be like in etc Prometheus, something using the file configuration. So now we would like to use the same file, so the traffic.yaml, to check the mutual SSL status, or to check just the SSL status. So we had a second job, which I will do part by part, but which will use the same file as input. But it will do something completely different. It will not check if traffic is alive. It will ask the black box exporter to inspect the SSL certificates. So let's take a look at the relabeling steps. First of all, this is in the job configuration. This is not the matrix relabel configs. This is the relabel configs. So the first thing is that, okay, we say, yeah, so there is an address in the file that is my actual traffic address. I will take that address and I will make it a parameter of my target. So I will say like the replacement for that address is https:/address/traffic/health, so that this is a new parameter that I will add to my target. It means that when Prometheus will fetch the metric, it will add that parameter, which contains the original address, but also like some prefix and some suffix. Then I want to say, okay, I want to use the HTTP2XX as a module for my black box exporter, which you can do in two ways. We have used the matrix relabeling because then we have one configuration, but you can also add that statically in this case because that replacement and target label is unconditional. There is no condition. It will just always do it. And then we also add a parameter so that we will change the address that Prometheus needs to scrape to be like that fixed address which we know is the black box exporter. So the initial address before we were relabeling that would be like the address of traffic/probe, and we changed that to first change the address that we want to relabel, and then we had a bunch of parameters at the end so that the black box exporter can work. And because we are using the same input, the same file as input, we know that everything that we scrape using the traffic job, we also monitor the SSL certificate. So we have dropped the Jira matrix that we don't want, but you can also say you have two Prometheus servers and you want, okay, to split the loads between the two of them, but using the same configuration. What you can do is just say, okay, I will take all the even IP addresses on one side, and I will take the other ones on the other side. So you can use action drop and action keep to say, okay, this is the matrix I want to scrape, and on the other side, this is the metric I don't want. I am not interested to get them. So you can also say, okay, if you have too many targets, you can just say, okay, I will use two Prometheus servers, and I will do something simple like this to split them and not monitor all of them all the time. Alerting. So what can you do when you relabel alerts? So when Prometheus is sending alerts to the alert manager, it can add the external labels, which means that if you have like your Prometheus server in the external label, what will happen is that the alert manager will say, okay, those two alerts, I will not group them, I will not deduplicate them because they are different. The Prometheus server is different. And you don't want that, actually. You don't want to have like your alert twice in the alert manager. So what you do is that you add alert relabel configuration that say, okay, you see that Prometheus server, when you send an alert, so that's in the alerting part, just say that it is the prom from the data center one that's sending the alert, so that you don't, the alert manager knows, okay, this is Prometheus server from DC1, and I can just notice when two alerts are the same in that case. What you can also do is to add a default label to your alerts. So that was a tricky one because you cannot, by default, add an empty regex to your alert. So what we have done is we have just put parentheses between single quotes, and then what you have at the end is a default value, which is P1. So in this case, if we have an alert that is sent to the alert manager that doesn't have a priority label, then we automatically add a priority. You can do that with all kind of alerts that you might want. Like what we also do is we had as an instance the Prometheus server by default is there is no instance label. So if we are grouping lots of labels, then we had an instance label so that when the alert manager receives information, it knows we know that there will be that instance label all the time for all the alerts. If there is already a priority, then it will simply not be in that relabeling configuration. The last use case is the remote try. So you know Prometheus that will speak to another database system to say, okay, this is my metrics. You can also say, okay, but so for the remote write, I actually only want to keep like the metrics that start with job, for example, so that you only send to the remote write site. We only send the aggregated metrics and not everything that Prometheus is doing, which is also very useful because then you can, because the remote try is also a list, you can say, okay, for that backend, I send those metrics. For that other backend, I can send other metrics, and that's not a problem. So that's another use case for labeling, and you can also alter your Prometheus server if you want to like unify them in the remote try from your two different Prometheus server. You can also do that. So relabeling is something that's actually quite unique to Prometheus. I have been using a lot of open source software. I've never seen something like that in any other place. So it's something that you really need to learn when you use Prometheus, even if you can perfectly use it without that, except the day you want to use the SNMP exporter, then you are like, yeah, I need to copy and paste this and then it will work. So it's important to understand it because like the SNMP exporter configuration is a good one, but you can improve that and make it like better for your own stuff. So it's also important to know that you can do that in PromQL also. So you have function in PromQL that can also alter the labels. And you can also just dropping metrics and dropping configuration is also important so that relabeling is not just for your metrics, but if you learn that once, you can apply that to your configuration as well, which is really, really great. And also like being able to drop metrics helps a lot in lots of cases when you just don't want to like deal with some exporters that don't behave like you would like them to behave, and so that you limit the overhead on your Prometheus server. Okay, that was it. One last word. I will give a Prometheus workshop in Berlin in November. So if you are interested, it will be more on Prometheus 101. But so the word is done. So thank you. If you have any questions now, I will take them happily.
Out of that lunch. Questions? Any hands? Or is relabeling now solved for everyone forever? And I will no longer get any questions about it. Next one.
Did I understand that you can do relabeling in PromQL?
Yeah, you have the label replace and the label join functions that you can join labels, and you can also replace values from labels. Yes.
Thanks.
And you can change them also. And label replace also enables you to add new labels. So if you let the two last parameters empty, then you can add a new label to your matrix if you want it, which is very useful, especially like in alerting. You can use that.
Great talk. So can you give us an idea when it's a good idea to use relabeling and when in PromQL to use label replace, for example?
So in general, we don't do that much in PromQL directly. We do that directly in the configuration. But when you do the recording rules, then it's the location when you use the label replace. We try never to use that in the Grafana part because we prefer to have the dashboard having minimal impact on the Prometheus servers.
Hey, I optimized that. Any other questions?
Yes, hi. I missed the one thing about the dropping labels. It's applied for all historical data or just starting to change the configuration?
Can you repeat the question?
I mean the dropping labels. It's applied for historical data or which already in Prometheus.
No, so Prometheus never changes the historical data. So What you can do, if you really want to change the historical data, you need to use the PromQL functions to do that. And it will only be computed when you do the query.
Okay, good.
Hi. So do you ever envision using relabeling and maybe dropping labels as a way to rate limiter users? And like, if yes, then how can we do it dynamically?
Can you repeat the question?
So, you know, you can drop metrics, right? So I was wondering, can we use that as a way to rate limit users? So have a way that we can figure out, okay, how much somebody's emitting and dynamically apply relabeling as a way to rate limit?
Well, the problem with dropping metrics is that at the end, the exporter will always compute the metrics first. So if you really want to like lower the pressure of the exporter, you should modify them instead of dropping the metrics because it will expose the metrics anyway. So, yeah. What we do to solve some performance issue is that we have some Prometheus that we dedicate to some Grafana instances so that they only like federate to the Prometheus servers and only take the metrics that matter. So, but that's when we have lots of users for some dashboards.
Any more questions? No, I guess not. Well, thank you very much, Julien.
Thank you.